Hello class, I'm AJ, and today's video will be about marijuana. Not what you're thinking. This is a strictly informational video. So my purpose today is to show you the origins, where it came from, how did it get to the US, and its effect on many aspects of life. Alright? So I'm sure everybody's familiar with it. Maybe not familiar with that in that way, if you know what I mean, but you've heard of it before. You may know it as a different name. Okay? Some people call it pot, weed, ganja, grass, reefer, Mary Jane, herb, keef. For my Hawaiian folks out there, they call it pakalolo. There are many names for it. But like I said, today I want you to understand what it plays in religion, better yet, history. Let me broaden your sativa horizons. I say marijuana, but that name isn't really organic to the US. You can thank Mexico for that. The Mexicans pronounce it with an H, not a J, so they call it marijuana. Alright? The scientific name is cannabis. Alright? It's a dioecious plant, which in layman terms means that it comes from male or female. Okay? It also comes in two main types, sativa and indica. Since I am broadcasting from Germany, where the drug is still illegal here, unless you have terminal cancer, please bear with my visual cues, if you know what I mean. So, as I stated before, female plant. This little scrawny guy over here, that's the male plant. Okay? The female plant is where you get your flower or bud. So anytime someone talks about marijuana and its usages and everything like that, they're talking about the female. No one ever talks about this guy. Anybody know why? Because his sole purpose is to fertilize her so she can have the flower. Alright? Alright, so let's forget about science for a minute. Let's talk history. Cannabis is one of the oldest crops known to man. How old would you say? Cannabis birth certificate is a little foggy, no pun intended. But the earliest written record of it dates back thousands of years, at least 260 BC in China. Okay? Now the ancient Greeks and Romans, they were also familiar with the crop. The Greek historian Herodotus documented cannabis among the nomadic Scythian tribes that habitually traveled through northern Greece and Asia Minor. Okay? Now I know what you're thinking. During your collegiate history classes, you don't remember anything about the Romans sparking a joint or the conquistadors getting high. That's because most people only know about its recreational use. Cannabis had and still has many different practical uses, from clothing, paper, medicine, and rope. As I go back to my visual cue here, this sneaker here, which is made and sponsored by Adidas, if you see closely, is made by 100% hemp and is stamped on the shoe. So this is one example how hemp, which is the sister plant of marijuana, is used in clothing. Speaking of rope, alright, everybody knows about Easter Island and those huge stone statues out there, right? Now there's been many theories about how they got there or how they were situated. I've even heard some far-fetched things as if extraterrestrials placed them there and no one quite understands the origin. Well, some scientists from California, they did some research, they did some studies, they did some samples, and they pretty much said that they think that hemp rope, huge strands of hemp rope, was used to transport the statues to their current position. Didn't know that, did you guys? Well, how about Mary Jane's role in religion? Alright, we've all heard about Bob Marley and the Rastafari movement. If you listen in the background, I got some Bob Marley playing right now. Just a little mood setter for the topic. Okay? So, Bob Marley, Rastafari movement. Many devotees believe marijuana is the tree of life. Okay? Mentioned in Genesis. And everybody knows that's the first book of the Bible, correct? Okay. They also believe that it aids in the worship of their God, Bible study, and meditation. They actually believe that ganja brings them closer to God. It's crazy, huh? So let's hop back over to the Pacific Ocean to China, where it's believed the origin of cannabis. Ancient Chinese medical texts recommended marijuana for medicinal purposes, okay? And if consumed long enough, the user would develop the ability to speak to the spirits. There's an 18th century book on nutrition that corroborates this belief. Hinduism. All right. Hinduism, marijuana was used, and it stretches back to the 2nd millennium BC. It was used in the worship of the deity Shiva. Some of you may have heard Shiva before. Furthermore, there is a drink called bhang, which is infused with cannabis and is believed to cleanse the user of their sins and help them become one with Shiva and avoid their soul going to hell. Alright, let's talk about ancient Germanic paganism. Okay, they associated cannabis with Norse, the love goddess Freya. It was believed that Freya resided in the cannabis plant's flowers, so by consuming it, it meant being filled with divinity. Okay. So I know you guys saying, how did weed make it to the good old US of A? And why is it still illegal in some states? Alright. So we have the colonists to thank for that, guys. When the first settlers landed in Jamestown, Virginia, they were in search for resources. Gold, silk, other precious metals. They were looking to get wealthy and monopolize the trade for England. But alas, none of these resources were found. Except for, guess what? Hemp. So Walter Raleigh became especially excited about the prospect of harvesting hemp in American colonies as early as 1585, after Thomas Harriot, his friend and tutor, told him that he had seen hemp-like plants growing in the wild and it was easily usable. Okay? But understand that Harriot's hemp was unlike the marijuana plant. It was inferior. Okay? But he thought, you know what? It'll work anyway. Let's see if we can make a cash crop out of it. Alright? So, in 1611, the formal orders from the king was sent to raise hemp. Okay? His Majesty's loyal subjects and the new governor, Sir Thomas Dale, informed the colonists that the king expected them to grow hemp. Hemp was eventually trumped by by tobacco, and then by cotton. By 1890, hemp had been replaced by cotton as a major cash crop in the southern states. Some patent medicines during this era contained marijuana, but it was a small percentage compared to the numbers containing opium and cocaine. Right? It wasn't until the 1920s that marijuana began to catch on. Some historians say that its emergence was brought around the same time about Prohibition. All right? It was a change in the laws rather than changing a drug or a human nature that stimulated the large-scale marketing of marijuana for recreational use in the U.S. It wasn't until the 18th Amendment and the Volstead Act of 1920 that they raised the price of alcoholic beverages and made them less convenient to secure an inferior quality. And they did substantial commercial trade with marijuana for recreational use. Its recreational use was restricted to jazz musicians and people in show business. So it was a Hollywood drug, if we put that. They had these marijuana clubs called tea pads, and they sprang up in every major city. These marijuana establishments were tolerated by the authorities because marijuana wasn't illegal and the patrons didn't show any evidence of disturbing the community, harming anybody. It seemed pretty safe, all right? It wasn't considered a social threat. Let's fast forward. Marijuana was listed in the United States Pharmacopoeia from 1850 until 1942. and was prescribed for various conditions including labor pains, nausea, rheumatism. It was also used as an intoxicant, and it was commonplace in the 1850s until around the 1930s. So there was a campaign conducted in the 1930s by the U.S. Federal Bureau of Narcotics, which is now the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs. And they sought to portray marijuana as a powerful, addicting substance that would lead users into narcotics addiction. It is still considered a gateway drug by some authorities. In the 1950s, it was an accessory of the beat generation. And then in the 1960s, it was used for college students and hippies. It became a symbol of rebellion against authority. Anybody ever heard the movie called Reefer Madness? It's a fictionalized and highly exaggerated take on the use of marijuana. Okay? The story goes, there's a trio of drug dealers who led innocent teenagers to become addicted to reefer. All right, cigarettes, by holding wild parties and listening to jazz music. To make a long story short, the lives of all who are involved in this menace are inevitably shattered. One man becomes so addicted to the killer weed that the guilt over framing a teen for murder causes a judge to order him to be committed into an insane asylum. And at the end of the movie, the doctor there, Dr. Carroll, closes and advises us not to get trapped in the same tragedy. Alright? Here is the actual movie poster right here. Reefer Madness. The sweet pill that makes life bitter. Women cry for it, men die for it. Drug crazed abandoned. Hilarious. So here's a pretty cool fact, I think. So it's been said that this movie, Reefer Madness, was inspired by the case of Victor Licata. Allegedly, he killed his father, mother, two brothers, and sister with an axe in Tampa, Florida, October 16, 1933. Allegedly, while under this influence, he was declared unfit to stand trial for reasons of insanity. And he was pretty much got a psychiatric examination at the Florida State Mental Hospital and determined that he suffered from schizophrenia and homicidal tendencies. The Licata case was used to propagandize and effectively outlaw legal sales of the demon weed by passing the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937. The Controlled Substances Act of 1970 classified marijuana along with heroin and LSD as a Schedule I drug. So pretty much that meant like having the highest relatively abuse and potential and no accepted medical use. All right. Most marijuana at that time came from Mexico, but in 1975 the Mexican government agreed to eradicate the crop by spraying it with herbicide and raising fears of toxic side effects. Colombia then became the main supplier. Everybody, well, I can't say everybody, but here comes the Reagan and Bush administrations. They had the zero tolerance climate and resulted in the passage of strict laws and mandatory sentences for possession of marijuana and in heightened vigilance against smuggling on the southern borders. The war on drugs thus brought with a shift of reliance of important supplies to domestic cultivation, particularly in Hawaii, California. Today, 23 U.S. states legalize cannabis in some form. 5 states okayed medical use, and that includes California, Nevada, New York, Minnesota, and recently Georgia as of June 2015. And for the states that legalize recreational use, Alaska, Colorado, and Wisconsin, and as of July 1st, 2015, Oregon. As you can see, marijuana has been around since ancient times and has traveled far and wide. All right. This video was made to merely touch on its history, usage, recreational, non-recreational, and how it has changed the world in some shape, form, or fashion. Some of you may know that I live in Germany where, like I said, it's illegal, but few people, most of them who suffer from terminal cancer, have been granted permission to grow it by the German Ministry of Drugs and Medical Devices. So the point of this video is Whatever your stance on pot is, I encourage you to research it yourself. It looks like it'll be around for a long time. I'm going to let you guys listen to a little bit more Bob Marley, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation, and you have a wonderful day.